A drunk gets up from the bar and heads for the bathroom. A few minutes later, a loud, blood-curdling scream is heard coming from the bathroom. A few minutes after that, another loud scream echoes through the bar. The bartender goes into the bathroom to investigate what the drunk is screaming about. The bartender yells, "What's all the screaming about in there? You're scaring my customers." The drunk responds, "I'm just sitting here on the toilet, and every time I try to flush, something comes up and squeezes the hell out of my balls." The bartender opens the door and looks in. "You idiot! You're sitting on the mop bucket." A lady walked into a chemist and asked to buy some arsenic. The chemist asks, "Why do you want it?" She says, "To kill my husband." The chemist says, "Well, I am sorry, but I can't sell you arsenic." So the lady reaches into her handbag, pulls out a photo of her husband in a compromising situation with the chemist's wife. The chemist considers this for a moment and says, "Ah, you did not mention that you had a prescription." A man with a family and a 5-year-old daughter frequently visited his hot neighbor at her house in mourning. But the neighbor had a son who was about 6 years old. One day, as a way to distract and have some private time with his mother, he said, "Go to the patio and look at my house to see if anyone's there. If you find anyone, inform me." The son went as usual to check the Neogbauer's house and returned after half an hour, and he said, "Son, I didn't see anyone except your daughter who stood on the patio for half an hour like me." While standing in line at the bank, a mom struggled to keep her restless toddler under control. After several judgmental stares from strangers, she leaned down and warned, "Behave, or there will be consequences." Her daughter, without skipping a beat, shouted loud enough for the whole bank to hear, "If you don't let me go, I'll tell Grandma I saw you kissing Daddy's pee last night." Dead silence. Even the bank tellers froze. With what little dignity she had left, the mom grabbed her child and marched out, while laughter exploded behind her. A man with 2 buckets of fish was leaving Loch Lomond, well known for its fishing, and was stopped by a game warden. The warden asked the man, "Do you have a license to catch those fish?" The man replied to the game warden, "No, sir. These are my pet fish." "Pet fish?" the warden replied. "Yes, sir. Every night I take these fish down to this beach and let them swim around for about a half hour. When I whistle, they all come back, jump back into my buckets, and I take me home. We do this every night." "That's a bunch of hooey," said the warden. "Fish can't do that." "No, really," says the man. "Here, I'll show you." And he releases the fish in the loch. "Well, I've got to see this," Zrenya, the game warden replied. The man and the warden stood and waited. After several minutes, the game warden turned to the man and said, "Well?" "Well, what?" the man asked. "When are you going to call them back?" "Zrenya," the game warden huffs. "Call who back?" "Zrenya," the man asked. "The fish." "What fish?" A guy goes into the psychiatrist. The psychiatrist holds up a glossy piece of paper and says, "Tell me what you see." "I see my mom naked," says the guy. The psychiatrist smirks and holds up another one. "How about this one?" "That's you doing my mom." The psychiatrist starts laughing now. "Damn it, Doc! I thought we were supposed to be doing Rorschach tests today." One evening, a husband, feeling a little too confident for his own good, decided to tease his wife. "Maybe we should start washing your clothes in Slim Fast," he chuckled. "Could take a few inches off your backside." Cue the awkward silence. His wife, however, was not one to let such comments go unanswered. The next morning, as the husband reached into his drawer for a fresh pair of underwear, a mysterious puff of powder burst into the air. He coughed and blinked. "What the heck?" "April!" he called out. holding the underwear at arm's length. "Why is there talcum powder in my boxers?" From the bathroom, his wife called back sweetly, "Oh, honey, that's not talcum powder. It's Miracle Grow." Lil Johnny's mother took him along to the bank one busy Friday afternoon. The line was long, and right in front of them stood a rather large woman in a tight business suit, complete with a belt and a pager clipped to her side. As they waited, Lil Johnny stared up at the woman, then blurted out, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Mom, she's really fat." The woman turned around and gave an awkward, tight smile. Johnny's mom gave him a quick shush and a stern look. A moment later, Johnny stretched his arms out as wide as he could and declared, "I bet her butt is this big." The woman glared, and Johnny's mom leaned down and whispered harshly, "If you say one more word..." Things went quiet for a minute. Then little Johnny piped up again, "Look how her fat hangs over her belt like a muffin top." That did it. The woman turned around and snapped, "You need to control your rude little child." Now, red with embarrassment, Johnny's mother hissed a final warning to him under her breath. "One more outburst and you're grounded until college." Silence returned. The woman finally reached the front of the line. Just then, her pager went off, loud and shrill. Little Johnny's eyes went wide with panic as he screamed, "Run for your life, Mom! She's backing up!" Jackson dies of a heart attack and finds himself at the gates of hell, where the devil is waiting for him. "Well, Jackson," says the devil, "you're on the list, no doubt about it, but we're full up right now. Still, rules are rules. You have to stay. So I'll make you a deal." Jackson raises an eyebrow. "I've got 3 people here who weren't quite as bad as you." The devil continues, "I'll let one of them go, and you can take their place. You even get to choose who you replace." Jackson thinks, not ideal, but better than eternal damnation by surprise. The devil opens the first door. Inside, Richard Nixon is stuck in a pool, endlessly diving under and resurfacing, gasping and empty-handed, over and over. "No way," says Jackson. "I'm a terrible swimmer. That would kill me. Again." The devil opens the second door. Tony Blair is swinging a massive sledgehammer at a mountain of rocks, dripping with sweat, endlessly smashing stone. "Nope," says Jackson. "My back and shoulders are wrecked. I wouldn't last 5 minutes." The devil nods and opens the third door. Inside, Bill Clinton is lying naked on the floor, shackled, arms and legs spread. And there, bent over him, is Monica Lewinsky, doing what she does best. Jackson's jaw drops. He stares for a long moment. Then he turns to the devil and says, "You know what? I think I can handle this." The devil grins and says, "Great. Monica, you're free to go." A man walks into a bar and orders a drink. As he's sitting at the bar enjoying his beverage, a tiny horse walks in and sits down next to him. The man is shocked and asks the bartender, "Is that a little horse?" The bartender nods and the man asks, "What's it doing here?" The bartender replies, "It's a psychology experiment. We're trying to see if a miniature horse can function as a service animal for people with anxiety and depression." The man is intrigued and asks the little horse, "So, what do you do for people with anxiety and depression?" The little horse replies, "I tell them, 'Hey, at least you're not a tiny horse.'" A husband leans over and whispers in his wife's ear at the bar, "Do you remember the first time we made love? Behind this very bar, up against the back fence." She smiles wistfully. "Of course I do." "How could I forget?" He grins. "What do you say we go back there for old time's sake?" She laughs. "Oh, Marvin, you naughty old devil. Why not?" A police officer sitting nearby overhears the exchange and chuckles. Curious and slightly amused, he thinks, "I've got to see this. 2 old-timers reliving their wild youth." This I can't miss. So he discreetly follows them. The elderly couple slowly makes their way out back, leaning on each other, walking sticks in hand. They reach the fence. The woman lifts her skirt. The man drops his trousers. She braces against the fence. He steps in. And suddenly, they erupt into the most intense, wild, noisy lovemaking the officer has ever witnessed. Moaning, groaning, thrashing, shouting. It goes on for 10 minutes straight. Finally, both collapse to the ground, gasping and trembling. The officer is stunned. What incredible passion! At their age? He waits as they slowly recover, dress, and start shuffling back toward the bar. As they pass, the officer can't help himself. "Excuse me, folks. I just have to ask, what's your secret? That was amazing." The old man, still catching his breath, replies, "Well, son, 50 years ago now that wasn't an electric fence." The older cowboy turns to the younger one and says, "You see that? Just by putting his ear to the ground, he can hear what's coming from miles off." The Indian lifts his head and says, "A full wagon, drawn by a single horse, 2 passengers, and a dog?" The Indian puts his head back down and continues, "Heading east, about 3 miles away." The young cowboy exclaims, "That's amazing." The Indian replies, "Yep, they ran me over a half hour ago." Back in the dusty days of the Wild West, there was a young cowboy named Jace who had one burning dream: to become the fastest gunslinger west of the Mississippi. He practiced day and night, quick draws, target shooting, spinning his revolver like a circus act. But deep down, he knew something was missing. He just wasn't there yet. One Saturday night, Jace wandered into a saloon in a one-horse town, frustrated and covered in trail dust. That's when he saw him, the legend himself, old Silas McGraw, sitting quietly at the bar with a whiskey in hand. The man was long retired, but stories of his speed could still hush a room. Jace nervously walked over, bought him a drink, and said, "Sir, all I want in this world is to be the best. Think you could give me some pointers?" Silas looked him over, slow and squinty-eyed. Then he said, "First off, your holster's too high. Let it ride lower on your leg, makes for a cleaner draw." Jace adjusted it on the spot, stood up, drew his pistol faster than he ever had before, and shot the feather off a woman's hat halfway across the room. "Hot dang," he grinned. "Got another tip?" Little James comes down to breakfast. Since they live on a farm, his mother asks if he had done his chores. "Not yet," said little James. His mother tells him no breakfast until he does his chores. Well, he's a little pissed off, so he goes to feed the chickens, and he kicks a chicken. He goes to feed the cows, and he kicks a cow. He goes to feed the pigs, and he kicks a pig. He goes back in for breakfast, and his mother gives him a bowl of dry cereal. "How come I don't get any eggs and bacon? Why don't I have any milk in my cereal?" he asks. "Well," his mother says, "I saw you kick a chicken, so you don't get any eggs for a week. I saw you kick the pig, so you don't get any bacon for a week either. I also saw you kick the cow, so for a week you aren't getting any milk." Just then, his father comes down for breakfast and kicks the cat halfway across the kitchen. Little James looks up at his mother with a smile and says, "Are you going to tell him, or should I?" An elegant older lady walked up to the bar aboard a cruise ship, her pearls shining almost as brightly as her smile. "I'll have a scotch," she told the bartender, "with just 2 drops of water." As he poured her drink, she added, "I'm celebrating my 80th birthday today." "Well, happy birthday," the bartender said, sliding the glass over. "This one's on the house." Moments later, a woman sitting nearby raised her glass and said, "Let me buy your next one. 80 deserves 2 drinks at least." The birthday lady smiled. "Why, thank you, dear." Bartender, another scotch, and again, just 2 drops of water. Not long after, a gentleman on her other side chimed in, "I'd be honored to get you a drink as well." "Well, aren't you sweet," she said. "Bartender, one more scotch, with 2 drops of water, please." As he handed over the third glass, the bartender leaned in and said, "Ma'am, if you don't mind me asking, why always 2 drops of water?" The woman looked him straight in the eye and said with a wink, "Sonny, at my age, I've learned how to hold my liquor. It's holding my water that's the real challenge." A blonde and her husband are lying in bed listening to the next-door neighbor's dog. It has been in the backyard barking for hours and hours. The blonde jumps up out of bed and says, "I've had enough of this." She goes downstairs. The blonde finally comes back up to bed and her husband says, "The dog is still barking. What have you been doing?" The blonde says, "I put the dog in our backyard. Let's see how they like it." This morning, while Johnny's dad was sipping his tea, little Johnny walked up and asked, "Dad, what's between Mum's legs?" Dad raised an eyebrow and said, "That's paradise, son." Johnny nodded, then asked, "So what's between your legs, Dad?" Dad chuckled and replied, "The key to paradise." Johnny looked down for a second, then shook his head slowly and said, "Well, I think the lock's broken, 'cause the neighbor has a spare key." A science teacher in a girls' school asked his class, "Who can tell me what organ in the human body expands up to 10 times its normal size when stimulated? Mary, can you answer?" Mary turned bright red and stood up. "Sir, how can you ask such a question? That's inappropriate. I'm telling my parents and they'll go straight to the principal." The teacher was momentarily taken aback but quickly realized the misunderstanding. He then turned to another student. Lily eagerly raised her hand. "Yes, Lily?" "Sir, the correct answer is the iris of the eye." "Excellent. Well done, Lily," said the teacher with a smile. He then turned back to Mary and said, "Mary, I have 3 things to tell you. You didn't do your homework. You might need to clean up your thoughts. And lastly, one day you're going to be very, very disappointed." Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson went on a camping trip. After a hearty meal and a bottle of wine, they crawled into their tent and drifted off to sleep. A few hours later, Holmes woke up, nudged Watson, and said, "Watson, look up and tell me what you see." Watson rubbed his eyes, gazed at the night sky, and replied, "I see millions of stars." Holmes nodded. "And what does that tell you?" Watson thought for a moment. "Astronomically, it means there are countless galaxies and possibly billions of planets. Astrologically, I notice that Saturn is in Leo. Horologically, I deduce it's about 3:15 a.m. Theologically, I believe it shows the vastness of God's creation and how small we truly are. Meteorologically, I predict tomorrow will be a beautiful day." Watson then turned to Holmes. "What does it tell you?" Holmes sighed. "It tells me that someone has stolen our tent." A college pizza delivery boy arrived at the house of Mr. Smith. He delivered the pizza to his trailer. After giving it to him, Mr. Smith asked, "What is the usual tip?" "Well," replied the youth, "this is my first trip here, but the other guys say if I get a quarter out of you, I'll be doing great." "Is that so?" snorted Mr. Smith. "Well, just to show them how wrong they are, here's $5. "Thanks," replied the youth. "I'll put this in my school fund." "What are you studying in school?" asked Larry. The lad smiled and said, "Applied psychology." A couple in their early 60s was out celebrating their 35th wedding anniversary at a cozy little restaurant. Candlelight, soft music, everything was perfect. Suddenly, a shimmer of light appeared at their table, and a graceful little fairy hovered before them. "You two have stayed loyal and loving for over 3 decades," she said. "As a reward, I'll grant each of you one wish." The wife beamed. "I've always dreamed of seeing the world with my husband. I wish for us to travel together, first class, all the way." The fairy waved her wand and poof, a pair of luxury cruise tickets appeared. Then the fairy turned to the husband. He paused, then grinned sheepishly. "Well," he said, This is a rare chance. So I'd like a wife who's 30 years younger than me." The fairy raised an eyebrow but said nothing. She spun her wand again and poof! He was instantly 92 years old. A woman tells a psychiatrist about her husband's incredibly odd behavior. Woman: "Doctor, he just keeps repeating the same thing over and over." Doctor: "What does he say?" Woman: "He says, 'I'm a teepee, I'm a wigwam. I'm a teepee, I'm a wigwam.'" Doctor: "Don't worry. I know exactly what's wrong with him, and all he needs is a little relaxation." Woman: "Well, what is it? What's wrong with him?" Doctor: "He's just too tense." A woman's husband comes home wasted every night, and she always yells at him before going to bed alone. One day, she decides to try some reverse psychology. When her husband staggers in that night, she's waiting for him in her best lingerie. She sits him in an armchair and gives him a back rub. "It's getting late, big boy," she says after a few minutes. "Why don't we go upstairs to bed?" "We might as well," slurs the husband. "I'm going to be in trouble when I get home anyway." A blonde hurried into the emergency room late one night with the tip of her index finger shot off. "How did this happen?" the emergency room doctor asked her. "Well, I was trying to commit suicide," the blonde replied. "What?" sputtered the doctor. "You tried to commit suicide by shooting off your finger?" "No, silly," the blonde said. "First I put the gun to my chest and then I thought, I just paid $6,000 for these implants. I'm not shooting myself in the chest." "So then?" asked the doctor. "Then I put the gun in my mouth and I thought, I just paid $3,000 out of dollars to get my teeth straightened. I'm not shooting myself in the mouth." "So then?" "Then I put the gun to my ear and I thought, this is going to make a loud noise, so I put my finger in my other ear before I pulled the trigger." A vagrant comes up to the front door of a neat-looking farmhouse and raps gently on the door. When the farm owner answers, the vagrant asks him, "Please, sir, could you give me something to eat? I haven't had a good meal in several days." The owner says, "I have made a fortune in my lifetime by supplying goods for people. I've never given anything away for nothing. However, if you go around the back, you will see a gallon of paint and a clean paintbrush. If you will paint my porch in the back of the house, I will give you a good meal." So the vagrant goes around back, and a while later, he again knocks on the door. The owner asks, "Finished already? Good. Come on in. Sit down. The cook will bring your meal right in." The vagrant says, "Thank you very much, sir, but there's something that I think you should know. It's not a Porsche you got there. It's a BMW." Three old friends, a Scotsman, an Englishman, and an Irishman, were sitting at a bar, sharing stories over a few pints. The Scotsman lifted his glass and said, "You know, back in Glasgow, there's this wee pub called McTavish's. The owner knows all the locals. You buy 4 drinks, and he gives you the 5th for free. Can't beat that kind of loyalty." The Englishman smirked. "That's nice, Angus. But at my local in London, the Red Lion, you buy 2 pints, and the bartender gives you the 3rd one on the house, every time." Then the Irishman leaned back, took a sip, and said with a grin, "Lads, that's nothing. At my favorite pub back home, the second you walk through the door, they hand you a drink. Then another, and another. You drink all you like, no questions asked. And when you're full to the brim, they take you upstairs. And make sure you leave very, very satisfied, if you know what I mean. All of it, completely free." The Scotsman and Englishman exchanged skeptical looks. "Really?" the Scotsman asked. "That actually happened to you?" The Irishman shrugged and replied, "Well, not to me exactly, but it's happened to my sister several times." Lisa and Judy were doing some carpenter work on a Habitat for Humanity house. Lisa was nailing down house siding and would reach into her nail pouch, pull out a nail, and either toss it over her shoulder or nail it in. Judy, figuring this was worth looking into, asked, "Why are you throwing those nails away?" Lisa explained, "When I pull a nail out of my pouch, about half of them have the head on the wrong end and I throw them away. Judy became completely upset and yelled, "You moron! Those nails aren't defective. They're for the other side of the house." Drive-in movie. Did you hear about the two blondes that froze to death in a drive-in movie? They had gone to see Closed for the Winter. You might have to think twice about this one. Kai found out his ex was getting married. She wanted stability, a house, a man with insurance. He had a motorcycle, 3 unread messages, and a jacket that smelled like gasoline and freedom. While she said vows, Kai was screaming into his helmet at a pothole that owed him money. She was cutting cake. He was cutting lanes like they insulted his ancestors. He pulled over at a cliffside lookout, hoping for peace. Instead, he got wind strong enough to slap his soul and mess up his hair through a helmet. His phone buzzed. Another wedding photo. The groom wore loafers. Kai dry heaved. Rico pulled up beside him and took off his helmet like it was a dramatic movie reveal. Then he handed Kai a bottle of warm iced tea and said, "Here, hydrate your pain." Kai stared into the valley and muttered, "She found someone who brings her flowers. I bring exhaust fumes and commitment issues." Rico shrugged. "Yeah, but you also bring the thunder." They sat in silence, listening to the wind, the ticking of a cooling engine, and their emotional damage echoing off the hills. By sunset, they'd ridden 200 kilometers, outrun 3 goats, and emotionally processed nothing. At a gas station, Kai saw another wedding post. He revved his engine like a man in denial and said, "She married a man with spreadsheets. I have torque and tears." Rico patted his back. "At least you're still faster than your feelings." They rode off into the night, not toward healing, but at least toward better scenery. Kai whispered under his breath, "Next time, I'm falling in love with someone who hates weddings." Rico replied, "Next time, fall in love with someone who owns a bike." A couple were out Christmas shopping together. The mall was bustling with people, and as the wife emerged from a shoe and handbag store, she was surprised to find her husband nowhere in sight. Frustrated, since they still had a lot to do, she called his mobile to ask where he was. He answered in a soft voice, "Do you remember that jewelry store we went into a couple of years ago? The one where you fell in love with that beautiful diamond necklace we couldn't afford, and I promised I'd buy it for you someday?" Tears started to form in her eyes as she replied, barely containing her excitement. "Yes, I remember that store. How could I forget?" The husband paused for a moment before replying, "Well, I'm in the pub right next door." At 10 p.m., the phone rings in Dr. Stein's home. "It's Dr. Gold," says his wife, handing him the phone. "I hope it's not another emergency." Dr. Stein takes the call. "Hello, what's going on?" "Relax, everything's fine," Dr. Gold assures him. "I'm at home with Dr. Lewis and Dr. Kosiner. We're having a little poker game, but we're short one player. Thought you might want to join?" Dr. Stein, in a serious tone, replies, "Of course. I'll be right there." He hangs up the phone. "What happened?" his wife asks, looking concerned. "It's quite serious," Dr. Stein replies. "They've already called in 3 doctors." An 82-year-old husband and his 80-year-old wife went to a restaurant for breakfast, where the senior's special included 2 eggs, bacon, hash browns, and toast for $2.99. "That sounds good," said the wife. "Only I don't want the eggs," the husband added. The waitress frowned. "If you skip the eggs, it'll be $3.49 since you're ordering a la carte." "Wait a minute," the wife said, surprised. "You're charging us extra just for not taking the eggs." "Exactly," the waitress replied. "Fine, I'll take the special," the wife said with a sly smile. "How would you like your eggs?" asked the waitress. "Raw and in the shell," the wife answered. Later, she took the eggs home and baked a cake. A woman walked into a pet shop and immediately noticed a large, beautiful parrot with a price tag of just $50. "Why so cheap?" she asked. The shop owner hesitated. "I've got to be honest with you. This parrot used to live in a brothel. It might say some inappropriate things. The woman thought for a moment, then shrugged. I've heard worse. I'll take him. She brought the bird home, hung the cage in the living room, and waited. The parrot looked around its new surroundings, then at the woman and said, New house, new madam. A little shocked, she laughed it off. Later that afternoon, her 2 teenage daughters came home from school. The parrot observed them and said, New house, new madam, new girls. The daughters burst out laughing, though slightly embarrassed. But then the husband walked in from work. The parrot tilted its head, gave him a long look, and said, New house, new madam, new girls, old clients. The other night, I went out with the girls for a quick drink. I looked my husband square in the eye and said, Don't wait up. I'll be back by midnight. Promise. Famous last words. Let's just say one margarita turned into, well, several. Time slipped by faster than my self-control, and next thing I know, I'm stumbling through the front door at 3 a.m., trying to be as silent as a ninja in stilettos. Then it happened. The hallway cuckoo clock lit up like it had been waiting all night for this moment. Cuckoo, cuckoo, cuckoo. Panic. Quick thinking kicked in, barely. I figured if I added 9 more cuckoos, he'd think it was midnight. So I stood there, swaying, and manually added cuckoo, cuckoo, all the way up to 12. Genius, right? Wrong. The next morning, hubby was calm. Suspiciously calm. What time did you get in? He asked. Midnight, I said, confidently sipping my coffee. He nodded. Weird. The cuckoo clock might be broken. Why? I asked. He replied, Well, last night it cuckooed 3 times, said, Oh crap, cuckooed 4 more times, sneezed, giggled, cuckooed another 3 times, hiccuped, muttered something about tacos, and then knocked over the lamp. I'm grounded. The clock's grounded. And margaritas? Also grounded. So picture this. I'm sitting on the toilet this morning, mid-pee, when boom! A loud crash echoes through my house. Rowdy, my dog, goes ballistic, barking his head off. It sounded like someone had kicked in my front door. Still peeing, I panic. I leap up, yank my undies on, grab the gun from my nightstand, and sprint to the living room, ready for battle. Nobody's there. I call Brian because, let's be real, sometimes I overreact. He calmly tells me, Stay on the phone, walk through the house, and keep the gun ready. So now I'm clearing rooms like I'm on a SWAT team, slamming open bedroom doors, checking every window, nothing. I get to the hall bathroom. No windows in there, but you never know. I push the door open, and something pushes back. Cue full meltdown. I'm screaming, I have a gun! Set the alarm off. Grab Rowdy under one arm, gun in the other, and sprint across my yard. No bra, no pants, no shoes, looking absolutely insane. I jump in my car and drive to the dollar store up the street. Meanwhile, the cops show up at my house. They call me, Ma'am, can you return to the scene? So there I am, standing in my driveway in a t-shirt and underwear, asking politely if I can please put some pants on first. The officer checks the house, comes out a few minutes later and says, Ma'am, it was a curtain rod. A curtain rod fell. I ran out of my brand new house in my brand new neighborhood, half naked, screaming bloody murder because of a curtain rod. I'm officially done. Stick a fork in me. I'm roasted.